Welcome in for another episode of the Dynasty Gambit. Today, we're going to be talking about trades that you can make at your fantasy football deadline, whether you are in redraft or in Dynasty, and whether you have a trade deadline or you don't. We're going to follow that up next, talking some trades, guys. Oh, man, we are here back for another one. It is week 12, going on week 12. And we are really just getting down to the last couple of weeks before we get into the fantasy playoffs. And the likelihood is, some trade deadlines might have ended last week, this week, or even into week 13 next week. So before we get started into everything, Austin, let me ask you this. What are some of your preferred or favorite trade deadline strategies or trade deadline settings?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I know a lot of people have their trade deadlines this week or next week. I actually had, I think, one or two leagues that had it last week. But the normal setting is week 12 or 13. And I think that's kind of the default. It's what people are used to. I kind of prefer no trade deadline at all is for dynasty leagues, just because I think the reason why the trade deadline is put in place in most fantasy leagues is, number one, to kind of mirror the NFL, right? But more so, it's to keep teams that are out of it from helping other teams, right? That's kind of the idea, is that in a redraft league, a team is, 5 games out with 4 games left or something like that. Then, you don't want to have them making trades. But the thing with Dynasty is that you're kind of in a spot where the teams that are out of it are actually in a really good spot to make trades, and they're incentivized to not make bad trades because they have to continue living with this roster beyond this year. And so I actually think some of the best trades for rebuilders can happen late after normal trade deadlines and even in the playoffs. Sometimes you can make trades, going into the semifinals or the finals, where you get unbelievable value because a team's like, all right, this is it. I'm going for the championship. I'll give you, 2 firsts plus for Christian McCaffrey because I want to win. So you'll see stuff like that happen. And I think that makes for good. Game strategy. And I think it just opens things up, kind of takes the training wheels off a little bit. So I prefer that, but I do also think it depends on who you're playing with. You can have leagues where people get really upset if a team gets stacked, even if they're giving up a ton of value. So I think you do kind of have to feel it out. And I understand having trade deadlines. I do think if you have it, it should be week 13 or 14. I think it should be all the way up until the playoffs. I don't really like a week 11 or 12 because I think it limits what you can do. Although it does kind of put the urgency of you have to make a decision on whether you're going to rebuild or not, because you're locked after this happens. So, yeah, what do you think?
I mean, I'm also in the preference of no trade deadline, just because the thing is, it's at that point, it's like a lot of other things in fantasy football or dynasty fantasy football, where it leaves the autonomy up to the owners in the league to make the decision, to make the right decision as well. That we want to believe that our league mates are making better decisions. But the other thing too is if a team decides that they want to trade everything up to go for the championship, they're also taking the risk in trading a lot of those assets and then burning themselves in future years. So it's not like it's a easy cheat win when they're going into the championship and they're like the example you just said, trading 2 first plus for CMC. It's like those 2 firsts are going to mean something in next year, the year after that's draft, and you just lost a lot of value. But that person won the championship. And then on top of that, this was something that I saw in the Empire of the Elite Discord, actually from Buck Wild Sports, or Spencer Buckley from the Debbie Planet. he was saying that they were starting to want to institute in one league of his a penalty for people that would go past a certain point in a trade, like no trade deadline, but let's say beyond week 13 or 14. This was, I didn't hear specifics on exact penalty, but could you imagine having to pay an additional second on top of what you were willing to trade before or something like that as a way of, really pushing away from trading past a certain point?
Yeah.
I think that's an interesting idea as well, right? Something
I think
that a league would have to do.
because you have the
Yes.
increased desperation. But I do think that's an interesting idea. I like switching things up, getting some new rules to help adapt. I will say, this is very important. If you're going to have no trade deadline, you must make people pay for future years when they trade future picks, because you don't want to have somebody going all in, trading their 26, 27, 28, all of their picks,
and hop out,
winning a championship or not winning the championship and then quitting the league. So make sure that they're paying for those picks. That's very important, because that definitely can happen.
Yes, definitely. And I think that goes to, different rules for people. I mean, I think if you want to make anybody pay for any level of a pick, that's fine. And then I've seen people where they do either you pay only if you trade a first or only if you trade a first and a second. And it's just because those picks carry a lot more value versus third and fourths are really just dart throws.
Yeah, and I think it comes down to like the way the ease at which you can fill an orphan, right? Typically, I think really a good across the board rule is you trade a future first, you're paying for that year. I could go either way on seconds. Like some people do seconds, some don't. I have some leagues that do, some don't. But I definitely think first for sure need to be, once you traded that year's first, that year needs to be paid. Because then it's
and I know for you, like at least I've heard, when somebody's asking about an orphan, it's the same for me.
Yeah.
Does that team have its first for the next year? Or does it have all of its first that it has? Because if you're entering into an orphan and it has no first, or it has like no first next year, I don't want to have to go in and then start selling a bunch of assets just so I can be able to start drafting my own team.
It's tough to do. You're in this league too, but the Dynasty Trades in 5 league had a couple orphans that we both joined the league. And I just had to make it because there was no 26 or 27 first, I had to go make myself a competitor. So I made a bunch of win now trades because it's like I'm kind of in a box. Like there's no reason for me to tank. So it's like maybe I'll tank in 2020, for the 2028 draft, but I have to try to win these next couple of years because there's no first. Now, luckily the roster was pretty good, which is why I was willing to take it on. In fact, it was a dispersal draft, so I was able to kind of build my own team, which was fun. But it's still like when you don't have those firsts, when you don't have your own first for 2 years, it puts you kind of in a box of like you have to compete. So it makes it tough when there's orphans that haven't paid. So definitely, especially if you're going to have no trade deadline, it's a good principle to have.
Definitely. So let's go ahead and get into some of these trades, Austin. Sure. I generally have the members who had submitted them to us in the Discord. This first one comes up to us from Brian or BTwitch from our Discord, and that is going to be Keenan Allen, Stefon Diggs for Calvin Austin in 26 seconds. So he got Keenan Allen and Stefon Diggs. I really like this. I really love this trade, especially if you're a contender, because to me, Stefon Diggs, like I don't even really know where to put him at this point, like with where his value is at, because he is really helping contenders right now on a playoff New England team with Drake May as his quarterback. And then you have Keenan Allen, who, depending on where you put him at the value, I mean, I would say he's between 2/3 and a late second. So you're getting that for Calvin Austin in a 26 second, which Calvin Austin to me is probably at best a late third or 2/4.
Yeah.
I'm going to smash the Keenan Allen Stefon Diggs side.
I mean, this kind of pains me to say because I was a Calvin Austin believer and was hopeful that he would become something. He is getting very close to roster clogger territory for me. I think it's, unless you're in a full rebuild team where you're just stashing young guys in the end of your bench, I think he's almost cuttable at this point. And I think you'd have a hard time getting more than 1/4 for him. So being able to get this, I mean, Keenan Allen's a guy that's tough to trade to. He's producing a little bit better. Obviously, had a great start to the year, but he's definitely tapered off. I think it's McConkey and Gadsden and even Quentin Johnston, even though it depends on the week. I've been ahead of him in the pecking order, and so he's the risky flex every week. But to me, I would probably do this trade just for Steph Diggs, because I think at this
Yeah.
point, if you're a contender, you're looking at probably. I'm assuming if you're making this trade, he's a contender because you're trading for 230 plus year old wide receivers, but you're trading a late second for Diggs. That's a great. I think at this point, Diggs is almost. I probably wouldn't do this, but
Almost
he's
worth a first.
almost worth a late first at this point.
Yeah.
For contenders, because he has been such a smash, borderline top 10 play. It's interesting. I was doing my rankings in the league champ rankings. I can't rank Justin Jefferson above him. Stefon Diggs has been a better player this year for fantasy football than Justin Jefferson. And so
I think I have Stefon Diggs like top 5, top 6 this week.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, he's got to be up. He's got to be top 10 for sure. I think I probably have him closer to the top 5. So yeah, I mean, he's going to be a smash play the rest of the way. Drake May has been, he's arguably the MVP of the league. He's QB1, probably depending on the format. He hasn't played his bye, so it's a little bit, but he's a top 3 or 4 QB regardless of how you look at it. And he's the clear number 1 there. So I love this trade. I love getting the older guys. The 26 second, if you're a contender, is late. And actually, this is the point, I think, where your second round pick, although picks usually appreciate in value at this point of the year, when you know that you're going to be, like if you're in position for a buy, this is at worst, 209 at best, right? The highest pick it will be was 209. This is in some ways the best time to trade that second, because people are just trying to get any second right now when they're rebuilding. And so I don't mind this as a rebuilder, though. Like, you're getting a young guy and a second for 2 guys that are probably not going to be part of your roster. But I would probably shop Diggs a little bit more and see if you could get more than a contender second. So I like the value on the vet side.
Yeah, absolutely. And this next one here comes to us from Heisenberg. We got T. Higgins, a 26 fourth, for Jameson Williams in a 27 second. I'll let you go first on this one.
This is a good one.
It is. Especially, I think it's changed a little bit in the last couple of weeks.
I think it has. I think with the Sam Laporta injury, and now we're hearing, as of today, it sounds like it's probably out for the year for Sam Laporta.
Yeah, he just had surgery, I believe, which was the report.
I think he's going to be more involved in the offense. Jameson Williams is. I'm a big T. Higgins guy. I think that he does not get the respect he's due. I think he's closer to being a wide receiver 1 than people give him credit for. I think that I actually think I have him ranked like wide receiver 4 overall this week. So we'll see. It's kind of ambitious, but without Chase and possibly with Burrow back, I have high hopes. I think this is a good time to buy Higgins right now when there's uncertainty with the Bengals. Jameson Williams is coming off a couple good back-to-back weeks. You're sneakily getting the earlier year pick. I know that doesn't matter that much, but there's a little bit more value in a pick that's coming up sooner. Maybe, in the draft, you can flip a 26 fourth for a 27 third and make it a little bit better. So I do think I slightly lean the Higgins side, but I do like that the leverage is more with, you're getting 2 assets for 1. But yeah, I lean the Higgins side just because Jameson Williams is so inconsistent, and Higgins is more of a rock solid piece, and you're only giving up a second on top. But this is a good fair trade.
Yeah, I think I'm. Oh, it's like even, right down even for me. I lean the Higgins side for a contender.
Yeah.
Just because, well, one, you get if you got it this week, you've got, like you said, a top 10 start in T. Higgins while Chase is out for the week. And then opposite side of that, if you're a rebuilder, you just got yourself a second. And I think there's something to be said about Jameson Williams having a second half breakout towards the end of the year with one, you just mentioned the Sam Laporta injury, taking him out for the year. And then to me, what I saw, especially with, some play calling changes being handed over to Dan Campbell, even John Morton, the offensive coordinator, coming out and saying, I've failed Jameson Williams, which, I mean, it's hard to really read coach speak, but I think there's something to be said that you bought Jameson Williams low And if you're doing it on a rebuilder, you just did that in addition to getting yourself a future 27 second that you could possibly use either in a trade sometime later, or you could hold on to that second if you would like to and potentially just stick and pick. But I think it's a very, very fair trade. And I agree with you, though, that T. Higgins is probably being underrated more than what people probably should be putting him at.
Yeah. I mean, he's having a very solid season, even without Joe Burrow this year.
Yeah.
And he was a league winner last year down the stretch with Burrow. So I think, and he's been healthier. Like Higgins has just been healthier the last year and a half, 2 years. And that's been one of the biggest knocks on him. So I actually, Jameson Williams got off to a very rough start to the year. I saw in one league I was in, he got traded for, I believe it was Parker Washington, Devin Neal, and a third. So it was like, I mean, that's pretty dirt cheap. So yeah, I mean, his value was very low, and it's really turned around. I think this last couple of weeks, people have been like, oh, okay, this is what we were expecting from Williams. I think he's probably reached 1 first worth of value. And to me, Higgins being a 1 and a 2,
yeah,
about right. But I think I would definitely trade a 1 and a 2 for Higgins. So I like overall. I think that when I break it down like that, that makes me like the Higgins side even more.
Yeah. This one comes into us from Luke. It is 3.26 thirds for Chigakonkwo and Kayshon Boutte. And I don't think he shared at least where the thirds are at. I mean, when it comes to thirds, honestly, though, it's really just a dart throw. So does it really matter? Like knowing, I mean, the 301 does make a big difference between that and the 312. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, Boutte, he's such a, I think Chig for sure is probably worth a third. To me, Boutte being worth 2/3, I think at some point you could possibly try to get a second for him, right? Like I think he's still got it. He's coming back healthy this week, and he does have a good rapport with Drake May and has had some, high end wide receiver 2 weeks and some, some higher end point weeks. So I don't know. I think if you're lower on Kayshon Boutte, I'm okay, I guess, with the 3.26 thirds, but I feel like you might be able to extrapolate more from that.
Yeah, maybe. I think this is 3 dart throws for 2 dart throws. So I'll give me the 3 dart throws. That's the way I look at it. Boutte's had some nice games, but this is the kind of trade, if you're rebuilding, trying to get points off your roster, send these out all day long. Get kind of these guys that are usually projected, anywhere from 6 to 9 points per game, and get thirds for them, and then get another, get their replacement down the line, but those points don't count against you now. If you believe in Boutte, I think it's fine. I think paying 2/3 for him is fine. I don't know about Okonkwo. I mean, he's had a couple nice weeks, but Gunnar Helm looks pretty good there. I don't know what his long-term future is in Tennessee. He's just never been quite, what he was hyped up to be. I remember in one of my bigger leagues, Dynasty startup 3 or so years ago, when Chig was all the rage, I went back and forth on the clock between him and Sam Laporta for a long time. This is Sam Laporta, rookie Sam Laporta, and I took Okonkwo, and that is definitely one of those that you're like, man, I cannot believe I did that. But yeah, I mean, there's been hype around Okonkwo for a long time. There's a chance there's another spike where you can sell him for a third or 2, maybe. This is one of those trades that, though, I do like kind of making the little moves of getting more flexibility. You can draft other guys with those, or you can trade those thirds for other Okonkwos and other Bouttes, right? So right. I think I like getting the flexibility in the picks.
Yeah. I think it's, come draft time too, when it's so you're on the clock and somebody wants your thirds. If you decide, hey, I'm going to trade 2 of these 26 thirds and trade it for a 27 second, right?
Yeah.
Move back a year, because, and I think you were somebody that told me this. I traded you would kind of give me the guidance to trade in a 14 team league, the 114 in the 2025 draft for a random 26 first, because worst case scenario, it's a 26 114 again, but the likelihood is it's not going to be.
Right.
And so if you get the chance to just get a random from a very late very late pick, or if you do the same thing with 2/3 to get a second,
Yeah.
I'm going to do that every day.
Yep. And I bet, and all the time because of roster cut downs, right? Because people are like, oh man, I have 8 draft picks and I'm going to have to cut a bunch of guys from my team. People will send you offers. And this happens in every draft I've ever been in, where they're sending you Okonkwo, Booty, Jordan Whittington, like 4 guys for 1/3 just because they're like, I'm going to have to cut these guys anyway. So there's a chance you can get, both, 2 guys at this level for one of your thirds when you're on the clock. So yeah, I think getting the thirds is the play here.
Yeah. This next one comes to us from Trip, actually involving Luke as well, who was in one of the previous trades, or actually the previous trade. But yeah, so you have Trey Harris, a 26 first, 2 27 first, a 26 fourth for Jahmyr Gibbs and Cedric Tillman.
Okay.
And I believe, from what I understand, 2 of the first are expected to be mid to late. I don't know about the one of the other 27 first though.
Okay. We'll assume mid just because I think it's hard to make assumptions on 27 just yet.
Yeah.
I'll let you go first on this one.
Yeah. So, all right. I know a little bit more of the context about his team.
Okay.
He was basically 2 spots out of the playoffs. Needed a couple of wins to get into the playoffs. And at the beginning of the season was a team that he didn't think he traded for Gibbs. So that's part of the controversy of, like, the league chat was kind of confused as to why he did it.
Yeah.
And I think, as far as the context of why, that probably is confusing, as far as maybe that wasn't the move for that team to make. But let's say this was a contender. I think this trade actually is great for a contender. If you're pushing all the chips in and you're like, I need to get, Gibbs is the RB4 on the season.
Yeah.
Something like that. And, I think if you're calling your shot and you think that those firsts are going to be late, I'm fine with that, considering, Cedric Tillman and Trey Harris are probably pretty equivalent right now.
Yeah. And the fourth, take that out. It's 3 firsts for Gibbs, what we're talking about.
Exactly.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts, Austin?
Ooh, man, hearing that he's currently out of the playoffs, so at least one of those firsts has a chance to be, 104, 105, makes me not like it quite as much. If you told me that...
Actually, I think none of those firsts are his.
Oh, okay. So that does change things a little bit. Okay, that makes sense. That's good context. So if we're looking at these as most likely mid to late, it's still one of those things where it's like, if your team was a fringe playoff team, is this going to help you win a championship? Maybe. But was he one player away? I'd be curious. I'd like more context maybe on who his other running backs were. Like, is he adding, 8 points a week, 10 points a week to his roster from this? Just in general, Gibbs for 3 firsts is kind of like the going rate.
Yeah.
I personally am a little more cautious with trading 3 firsts for a running back. I'd rather get a wide receiver for 3 firsts. But Gibbs is one of those guys that's like in the elite tier. So I think it's fine on paper. I would much rather this be a team that was, 9-2 right now, and knowing that you're going to be a bye, and knowing that this can be the extra piece. Because if you're a game or 2 out of the playoffs, even best case scenario, you're going to end up probably as the 5 or 6 seed. Even if everything goes right, you're going to have to win 3 games. Strong chance you lose that first round game. So it's like, I don't know if I would be making an all-in move. Like, typically at this point for me, I think we've talked about this on previous episodes. If I'm not clearly a top 3 team, I'm not necessarily selling everything, but I'm not trading my firsts away to try to win a championship. I just think you can kind of force it too much. That doesn't mean you don't write it out, because I think there are definitely times where you feel like I'm the 4th or 5th best team and you make the playoffs, and then things break right and you win a championship. I'm not saying give up. I'm saying don't go all in to the point where you have to win this championship for it to work out. Be patient. Look at the rest of the season as a free roll of, if I win, great. If not, I save my assets for a run next year. And I think that's the key, is like, I wouldn't make a trade at this point in the season giving up 3 firsts for a player unless I'm like, this can help me win a championship right now. So that's the way I'd look at it. So I think with the context, I think I like the picks. I know that's probably
Yeah.
unpopular, but I think I like the picks.
Yeah. My issue is just like if you're fringed if you're even going to make the playoffs or not.
Yeah.
So you're going to end up going into next year when like you could have saved those picks, even if at the draft you decided to trade those firsts and get something at that point. Like that's also another point that we talk about too, right? Is that picks like the swing shifts. So right now, players are worth more than picks.
Yeah.
And then when you get closer to your rookie draft, picks become worth more than players.
Yeah.
So it all becomes about the timing of when you buy things. And if you're not going to be making, like, you're not sure where you're going to be making that playoff push, or you don't even know if you're going to be close to a buy, like trading all of that to get a running back, right? Whereas like you said, if it's a wide receiver, if you're going after Drake London, if you're going after, that's a lot more solid and safer of a trade when you're considering the shelf life of a wide receiver compared to the shelf life of a running back.
Yeah.
Gibbs is a hard runner. Luckily he does have a backup running back in David Montgomery that can be an RB1, RB2 when Gibbs is out, that kind of splits the carries. But it's still a risk.
Yeah, there's only two running backs that I won't give you a hard time for trading through first for, and that's Bijan and Gibbs. But
yeah,
I just think this is kind of knowing the position he's in. Maybe he's not the move I can make. It to me, it's not about whether it's the value of the player; it's about the opportunity cost of what else could you do. Are you really one player away?
Yeah,
or should you actually be splitting assets? Rather than combining to try to get one player. Because typically, if you're a team that's a fringe playoff team, your team is weak in a couple spots. Just being honest with how it typically is that you need more than one player to fix it. Even if that player is one of the best players in the league, it's probably not going to be the difference between you being 6th or 7th and being first. That's just typically the way it is. Assuming this isn't like this could all change if this is like a start 8, right? But assuming this is a typical start 10, 11, 12 guys, one player is, a smaller percentage of your whole team.
Yeah, no, for sure. So this next trade comes to us, Austin. So this is from MD. Actually, this is the third trade involving Luke from above. So he was having a fun day trading with these guys. So MD ended up trading Theo Johnson, Luther Burden, 226 firsts and a 26 third for Garrett Wilson and Ashton Jeanty.
Is there any premium?
I believe it is either half point or full. Let's just say 0.75.
Okay.
Because I think it is either half point or full point. And then let me add the context too, because a lot of people were also, they're seeing, hey, it's a Dalton trade. Like, of course, this is what happens. But no, so it's an early one of those 26 verses projected early, like top 3. So that adds a lot of context because you're considering, if it is the 101, we're looking at Jeremiah Love as like the next level of Ashton Jeanty, right? So if you take into context that it's a top 3 pick, it does make a difference.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're essentially getting Garrett Wilson and Ashton Jeanty for 2 firsts, Theo Johnson and Luther Burden, and you add the 26 third. To me, it's Garrett Wilson and Ashton Jeanty here.
Yeah, I think both players are worth 2 firsts by themselves.
Yeah,
and this is 2 firsts and a bunch of stuff. You could make the argument if you're a Theo Johnson believer that in a high premium, he's worth a second. Maybe I think he's probably a third, but you can make the argument for a second. Luther Burden is worth a second. I think that he has the potential to become worth a first, but I don't think anybody's paying a first right now. And a third. So basically 2 firsts, generously, maybe 2 seconds and a third. Yeah, I don't see how that's a good trade. Even if you're rebuilding, it's like, okay, I want to get a top 3 pick to draft Jeremiah Love. It's like, well, you have the 101 from this year that you're giving away.
Right.
So I don't know. I don't think it's like horrendous if the pick ends up being Love, because I think that Love will immediately probably be valued ahead of Jeanty just because of Jeanty's rookie year struggles. But there's there's no guarantee that Love isn't going to be in a bad situation and be exactly the same, where he's, the talent's there, but the offensive line isn't there, the quarterback play isn't there, the coaching, whatever you might think the problem with the Raiders situation is. So I think the value is definitely on the players. Now, the interesting thing is that Garrett Wilson is likely, he's probably going to come back like week 16 if he does at all. He's not a huge asset for the rest of this year, and neither is really Jeanty. I think Jeanty's startable, but it's not like he's going to be a league winner. So this is kind of an interesting trade as far as like,
for context.
Is this an older trade? Is this before
that? Well, no. MD traded this as a rebuilder. As a retooling team. So he knows that Wilson and Jeanty are essentially not usable this season.
I think so. Assuming, where are these first? One's early and is the other one late?
One's early and one's late.
Okay. Yeah, I think in some ways it's kind of a sneaky play, because I think that Jeanty's probably, let's say it becomes the 101. I think Jeanty's probably equivalent with Jeremiah Love as far as dynasty value. And then, getting Garrett Wilson for a late first and Luther Burden, I think is fine. I think it's good. So I think overall,
it makes it more even.
I like the Wilson and Jeanty side, but I wouldn't, if I'm a contender, I wouldn't trade my 226 firsts for these guys. It would be for something else. So I kind of see even though the value's there, I kind of see these are definitely future assets. So the fact that he's a retooling team makes it make a little bit more sense. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And as you guys can see, right? Like that's where it breaks down to with a lot of these trades. Like, yeah, we could take it in a vacuum, but like when we're at the trade deadline, all of this context matters. And that's why we want to target, if you're a contending team, target those rebuilding teams. I just got a deal done yesterday. It was Tedero McMillan and Jahmyr DK for it was Garrett Wilson, a late second, and Kayshon Boutte, right? And I think you look at it and you're like, well, if Garrett Wilson was healthy, that trade would you're probably giving up too much with adding on the second. But actually that was some of the content that some of the conversation.
Who did you get?
I got Tedero McMillan and DK.
DK, yeah. Which DK is the wide receiver 1 for Tennessee this week. I kind of like him as a sneaky play. Yeah, but I think Tet after last week is probably. I would have probably told you a couple weeks ago that
that's an overpay.
Yeah, that Tet is not worth. Tet is way below Garrett Wilson, but I think they're getting closer to even now. So I like that trade for you. I think it makes sense. But yeah, like you said, if I'm a rebuilder, I'm trying, and I am doing this in a couple leagues, like making all the offers I can for Garrett Wilson.
Garrett Wilson, 100%.
Sam Laporta, the guys that are like they're out for the year, they're not, or out for the foreseeable future, and they're not going to help you right now. But I want them on my team for next year. I want to stash the value. Their value is going to come back up. So
it is interesting. I want to know your thoughts on this, Austin. Right? So like those are the players that we're targeting now because those are fresher from injury. But like injuries that happened at the beginning of the season, like Malik Neighbors.
Yeah,
I feel like he's kind of leveled back closer to the value that he's going back up.
Well, I think what happened with Malik Neighbors is every contender who had Malik Neighbors traded him for JSN or CD Lamb. And so what happened is now the Malik Neighbors is on a team that's not going to trade Malik Neighbors because he's on a team that is tanking for next year. So I think we've just seen a lot less Malik Neighbors involved trades. I think that's probably why. But I do think a sneaky thing, because you don't think about these type of guys on a rebuilder, but like James Conner, Tyreek Hill, J.K. Dobbins. Even if you're paying a dirt cheap price. You're paying, Bam Knight, Kamani Vidal, guys that are playing right now that'll give a couple guys, give teams a little boost for a short period of time, but they're not going to help you at all. They're going to be worthless next year. So getting a guy that maybe Connor never comes back and is the same, maybe Hill never comes back and the same, but there's a little bit of a, if he does, this guy's immediately worth a second. And I just made a ton off this. So I think those type of guys, James Conner, Tyreek Hill, J.K. Dobbins, that type where it's a veteran that's hurt that people are like almost all the way out on, you can probably get them pretty cheap and just stash them. And if they become nothing, they're nothing. Joe Mixon, that's another one where it's just like you can get them dirt cheap and they won't hurt your team because they're scoring 0 points. And maybe they become something you can sell next year.
Yeah. Speaking of another player who's going, cheaper because of the injury right now, and this trade was made by Tiz in our Discord within last week. So he's on the Jaden Daniels side. And when he was messaging us in the Discord, I'm like, there's no way you can get it done to get Jaden Daniels and Puka Nacua for Drake May and Ladd McConkey. And he got it done. So this is overreaction from the other owner to sell. Yeah, you're selling low on Jaden Daniels when you know what he's worth. Basically, him and Drake May are back to back, and then essentially Puka Nacua and Ladd McConkey aren't even in the same stratosphere. Yeah. So this is easily a win for you. And I think he was either retooling or possibly even on a contender, you can figure it out. You make this deal happen and you spend some picks or you find some ways to allocate, because when this deal hits in your inbox, I find it hard to turn it down.
Yeah, I mean, I think Ladd is probably 2 firsts less than Puka. At least a first and a second less than Puka. And and Daniels and May is, if you give me a second on top of either of them, I'll take the other. And so I mean, I would say if you take out Jaden Daniels in this trade and put in Brock Purdy, I might still take the Puka side. I think that it's that big of a difference between Puka and Ladd versus Drake May, and I'm a big Drake May fan, so don't get me wrong. I would take him over Daniels straight up, but yeah, I don't think the drop off from May to Daniels. Some would argue there's not a drop off at all. I think Daniels is ahead of May in some people's rankings, but I do think there's a little bit of a drop off, but it's nowhere near the drop off from Puka to Ladd. And to me, even on a contender, this is not that I don't want to trade Puka on a contender. So it's kind of a weird one. This would not be what I would be looking to do. I would be way more willing to trade Jaden Daniels in a second for Drake May, or even overpay, trading Jaden Daniels and I don't know, a flexible wide receiver, even overpaying and doing Jaden Daniels and Jordan Addison for Drake May, something
like that. You just mentioned Jameson Williams, right? So
yeah, Jameson
Williams for Drake May.
I think that would be an overpay, but it's I need the quarterback right now, so I can do that. I'd rather do that than trading away Puka, because I don't even know if this is guaranteed to give you more points.
Yeah. So Tiz, we're telling you, man, you won this deal. Yes. Good job. But yeah, man, that's quite the. I have to imagine your league chat was just in a roar about.
I don't know if it was he a contender or not. Is he a contender or not?
I don't think he was a contender. If this is the same team I'm thinking about, he's like a fringe playoff team.
Because I'd even consider, I would probably still do this on a contender. It'd be very ballsy because you're trading away Drake May for Daniels, but
you can spend a first on Sam Darnold or something.
Yeah, or just let Daniels for Hurts a first and a second, maybe, or something like that. I think you could easily turn it around. Maybe you couldn't get that done, but something like that, where you just
or hell, you trade him for Burrow and some picks now that we know that Burrow's coming back.
Yeah, so I think there's a lot there, or you just say, hey, I just got a boost at wide receiver, and I'm going to buy Marcus Mariota and Kirk Cousins or something like that. Jacoby Brissett. So there's a lot of guys that have been productive that you just plug into your QB2, and you probably increased your wide receiver production by 8 points a week. So as long as you can make up some of that from the QB drop off, you'll be in good shape.
Oh yeah, for sure. So we've got a couple more trades here, and that is Chase Brown for DK Metcalf. And I'm not a fan of usually 1-for-1s. I'm going to take Chase Brown here.
Yeah,
but especially dependent on need for position. If I'm a contender, the likelihood is I'm probably in need of a running back. And I don't know. I find it hard to. So the person who sent it to us, I'm trying to remember who was on the receiving end of this, but I don't have it up right in front of me right now.
Yeah, I mean, in a vacuum, in a vacuum, Chase Brown, but I guess it does matter. I mean, are you starting 4 wide receivers and 1 running back? I mean, there's different formats that I think could change things.
Yeah.
Um,
This
but I
was
think,
this was Brian B Twitch, so he had received Chase Brown.
yeah, I think in a vacuum, assuming both teams are at least like, I would assume a trade like this probably doesn't happen unless both teams are kind of in the playoff race and they have a need at the other position. I think Chase Brown rest of season is a much better asset. Metcalf's struggled because there's no other weapons in Pittsburgh and teams just take him out of the game basically.
Yeah.
And Chase Brown, with Flacco has been great, and at Burrow, with Burrow coming back, he could be a league winner. So yeah, Chase Brown in a vacuum. This is one of those that's tough though without format and scoring and all that stuff. But
yeah, definitely. Let me ask you this. So, like, focusing on DK Metcalf, because of course your team, the Dallas Cowboys, signed, and actually I think it was traded
the third
for George Pickens. Yeah. And if you know enough about George Pickens, or at least have been a fan of George Pickens, you knew what his outcomes were.
Yeah.
So like Pittsburgh, they dropped the ball on that one, right? Like, we know DK Metcalf's ceiling was essentially what he was in Seattle.
Yeah.
And George Pickens, I don't even know. Like, the ceiling is kind of unseen still, because he was performing as the wide receiver 6 while CD was out. He's still killing it.
They basically gave the same amount of money, more money to Metcalf than they probably would have to Pickens. And then they can't even say it's a character issue or whatever, because Metcalf has had just as many, if not more, run-ins with stuff. So it's like it was very odd. In some ways, I would have liked to see them keep Pickens and sign Metcalf and just try to run that with Rodgers. That would have been really fun to watch.
It would have.
But very, very interesting. Yeah, I don't know what they were thinking. I think they were hoping that either Calvin Austin or Roman Wilson would take the next step, and neither one of them have. And then the tight ends, Jonnu and Freiermuth and Washington, they all contribute a little bit, but none of them are world beaters.
Right.
So, yeah, it just hasn't really worked out great in Pittsburgh. And maybe brighter days are ahead for Metcalf. Maybe Will Howard becomes something, or maybe they trade or draft for another quarterback once Rodgers is gone. But I just he's kind of in that tier of receiver that's getting older. I don't see a way that his value is going to go up. I think he's 28 at this point, so we've probably seen his best days already. There's no guarantee that Chase Brown's going to be anything beyond this year either, right? Because maybe the Bengals draft somebody, but down the stretch, I'd rather have Chase Brown. So in a vacuum, give me Chase Brown.
Question before we get to the last trade, Austin, but do you guys think you re-sign George Pickens?
I think so. I think at least so. I think they want to franchise tag him. The question is, can you franchise tag him without him getting upset? And so that's the question. I think they'll either do that or they'll sign him to an extension. I do think. I mean, there's a lot of money wise, a lot of money has been freed up from the Micah Parsons trade, which I've been a vocal defender of, which I know is a minority position on the internet. But I think it was a good trade that created good flexibility for us.
You guys got Leonard Williams. Wait, which Williams brother? Quinnen Williams from the Jets. Yeah.
Yes.
Which, man, Jerry somehow, like, some way, even though people view him as, not a great owner and all these things, does work like some good deals. And it's hard to know if it's him or if it's his children that are getting some of that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's kind of, my guess is that he's kind of realizing, okay, realistically, I'm getting to the end of my life, and if I want to see one more championship, we need to start making some moves. And so I actually think if we had signed Micah, you would have been, I think that the defense would have obviously been better, but you would have been locked in a spot where it's like you can't sign anybody else. No chance of re-signing Pickens or Javonte Williams or any of these other guys, and so you're kind of locked in that you paid Dak and Lamb and Parsons, and you can't really build anything else. So I think, knowing that we weren't a Super Bowl team anyway, right? Maybe we were a playoff team if we kept him, and we aren't going to be now. Maybe, but at least it's sometimes it's just kind of like we talked about being stuck in the middle. sometimes you got to just trade one of your top assets, get a bunch of liquid pieces, tear down in order to build back up. So
yeah, I mean, fantasy football imitates real football in the way that we try to do things, and we prioritize wide receivers and quarterbacks over running backs and tight ends. So just like in real life. Last trade here, Austin. This is an interesting one because it's involving two players coming that will be coming back from injury, and then you have Patrick Mahomes, who is. What is he's still like top 3 QB right now, okay, QB2 somewhere in that. And then Alec Pierce, who has been a very, very like breath of fresh air in Indianapolis. Honestly, it's hard to determine. Michael Pittman has been very solid, but so is Alec Pierce, and has been also a great target for Daniel Jones. So at the outset of this trade, if I'm rebuilding or retooling, that Joe Burrow, Garrett Wilson side is very enticing to me. But if I'm competing, I don't really feel too bad about taking Patrick Mahomes and Alec Pierce here.
Yeah, I mean, I think this trade makes more perfect sense for both sides if Burrow was out for the year. And my guess is this trade was made a couple weeks ago, right? So there was less clarity on when Burrow would be back. And so that's probably what happened is the owner of Burrow and Wilson was like, all right, well, neither of these guys are going to be helping me this year, so I need to make a move. I think now that we know Burrow is going to be back, this trade looks a little bit more lopsided. But I don't hate it. I think Alec Pierce is eclipsed. Josh Downs is the 2. Pittman's had a great season, so I think he's probably the 1. But I can see a trade like this making sense if you're a contender and you're wanting to make a move. But this is where you really, as a rebuilder, capitalizing off that. I mean, Garrett Wilson's worth a lot more than Alec Pierce. And in a lot of ways, this trade is very similar to the one that Jaden Daniels and Puka for. It's obviously just we're working with different tiers. Wilson is a tier below Puka and Pierce is a tier below McConkey, but it's the same type of the difference between Wilson and Pierce is much greater than the difference between Mahomes and Burrow. So,
for sure.
Give me Burrow and Garrett Wilson.
Yeah, and this came to us from Cascade. So we think you took that one and won it, buddy. But yeah, that closes out the last trade for us. And I think the takeaway from this episode, right, is that all context of your league, of your team, of how everything with these trades goes matters. And so, we didn't get a lot of context from our followers in some of these trades. We just told people, give us trades. And a lot of times we do get a little bit of context. And I do know some of the context behind some of the trades, knowing some of the players or the owners that did submit them to us. But, as you're closing out these last couple of weeks, pay attention to your league mates. Look at, some of the things that they're trying to do and kind of what their goal is to achieve. Because, again, Austin, I've talked about it before. If you're a contender at this point and you have a late 26 first or 26 second, there's no reason that you need to hold on to it with, just gripping onto it for dear life. Like you could spend that and it's time to spend it. Right. Yeah. So Austin, any parting thoughts on for our listeners, as far as trades to make, maybe not trades to make, but advice when it comes to searching for the right trades. And have you had any recently that you've done that you felt like that was the right trade for me?
To address that first part first, I think the key is very much like we talked about league format, understanding the scoring, understanding what the other team is going to need, right? So don't try to make a trade that makes sense for a win now for a rebuilder or vice versa. So when you're looking at people to trade with, think about what they're going to want so that the trade can potentially have traction. I think when people ask us questions in the Discord about trades, I usually ask a series of questions. I'm like, all right, so who do you have on your team? Are you a contender or rebuilder? Are these picks going to be early or late? How many starters do you have? I think because the context matters a lot. It changes things a lot. Like we're talking about that Chase Brown, DK Metcalf trade. My knee-jerk reaction is Chase Brown, but it's like, well, wait a minute. Let's think about the context a little more. Like, how many starters do you have? Is it a wide receiver heavy league? Is there bonuses for wide receivers and not for running backs? Stuff like that can change some of that conversation. So I think that's one thing, especially if you're in a lot of leagues, remembering the settings for that specific league. Maybe this league has a point per carry and running backs are more valuable. So don't undersell your running backs. So look at that kind of thing. But yeah, I mean, I've been making a lot of trades. On a contender, I traded TJ Hawkinson and a late first for George Kittle in a second. It's one of those, I think it's value-wise, it's probably a slight overpay, but I know that pick is going to be, I have a top 2 team. I would be surprised if I didn't at least make the championship game. And even if I'm going to have a bye, so worst case will be a semifinal team. So I'm okay with that. Hawkinson's been basically a 0 for me this year. I needed an upgrade at the tight end position. So something like that, I think fine making. And then on the flip side of things, I did a big trade where I traded Josh Allen for 3 firsts and T. Higgins. And then there were some other pieces going back and forth, but I just thought that was like, okay, that was a good deal.
Did you say Josh Allen for 3 firsts and T. Higgins?
Yeah, I also said it was Josh Allen, Jawan Jennings, and David Montgomery.
Okay.
3 firsts,
yeah.
T. Higgins. Yeah, and maybe another pick or something like that. So I mean, overall, it was, there was a couple other pieces that can help the contender. It wasn't just T. Higgins and 3 firsts for Allen, but yeah, Josh Allen's one of those guys that's hard to trade. But sometimes you have to, if you get a ton of value, it's like, okay, this is a piece that actually can kickstart your rebuild. So I have teams where I'm going both ways, making moves. Traded 2 firsts for Rashid Rice on a contender. So yeah, a lot of stuff like that.
Yeah, no, I've been trying to, and the fun part about it is when these things happen, they happen naturally, right?
Yeah.
Like sometimes you receive an offer in your inbox and then it's like, okay, well, I just accepted 2 trades in the same day. And then I'll go like a week or 2 without a trade. And it all ebbs and flows and just looking for those things. But, one thing, guys, is definitely, keep throwing us suggestions of like trades in your leagues. And especially as the deadline closes, we're here for you guys to help you navigate those things.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Always be willing. I just talked about some big swing trades, but sometimes those little unsexy trades, like trading, Davis Mills and Kirk Cousins away for thirds, doesn't seem that great. Even when you're a contender, if they're your QB 4 and 5, those guys aren't going to be worth thirds next year. So it's one of those things where you're just like accumulating value for other moves down the line. So I'll be looking for those types of things too.
Yeah, definitely. And that's, I mean, just like we talked about with like the trading 2/3 to upgrade to a second in the following season, or like you've talked about where it's like even just now, but like trading a quarterback who, well, at that time we were talking about Carson Wentz and a 4th for like a 3rd, right? Because you're not going to get anything more for Carson Wentz than that. But yeah, just looking out for those things is big. But yeah, as definitely hit us up at the Discord. Of course, subscribe, like, share our stuff, because we like to reach out to as many of the followers as we can, and being able to help you guys win your leagues. And of course, we want to thank FSAN and the Grindhouse for hosting the show. We do a lot of great work within, of course, the Dynasty Gambit, but like also we're part of the larger community within the FSAN. And there are some things like the rookie guide coming out within the next couple of months that, or some of the other things that, a lot of us contribute to. And we've definitely, got some other things going on. So, follow us on X. I'm at Dynasty Big Mac FF, and then Austin is at Dynasty Austin MJ. So, reach out to us wherever you can find us, and we will see you guys on the next one.
Yep. Sounds good.